Hey everybody, thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedules to take a look at this quick demo. I'm Jeremy Carney from Central Coast Analytics, and what we're going to do today is take about 5 or 10 minutes and show you some of these brand new capabilities and the power to brewery teams when we take all the data out of Ecos Craft Insights and we display them in these best-in-class data visualization solutions. The whole idea being we can give your team a high level overview of performance and then really quickly be able to drill in so they know what to action. This one's going to be focused on margin percentage, which can be tricky for a lot of brewery teams to be able to take these actions on. So first, I'm going to set the stage with a real life brewery scenario, talk about some pain points that brewery teams might have working through this data. I'll spend the majority of the time though demoing these solutions so you'll really be able to see how your team can use them in order to improve business performance. And then we'll wrap up by reviewing some of those benefits and then give you some next steps so your teams can get started on this in the next couple weeks. So this team, like a lot of others out there, are really focused on profitability these days. Maybe their mindset has switched a little bit over the last 5 or 6 years to being, they were focused on growth, but now that sales are maybe flat or declining even, it's really critical to dive into margin in order to drive profitability of the business. And what's great about gross margin is it involves the whole team, right? Everybody has an impact in it. The sales team as they're involved with mix and pricing, and then the operations team when it comes to cost of goods sold. But what's difficult about margin is the analysis can be pretty tricky, right? So at the high level, at maybe your financial statement, you can pretty quickly get to a margin percent, but that's not actionable at that level. You really need to be able to break it down into by product, by package type, by customer, by region, by channel, all these different ways in order to find out what you really need to action. And because it involves different people doing the analysis, putting the numbers together, in a lot of cases finance, and then involves direct action from the sales and operations team, a lot of times there may be a little bit of conflict or disagreement when it comes to this because the team doesn't have a process that's really built in on a foundation of data that's sustainable and repeatable. So in this scenario, what's this brewery team need to be able to get to? They need to really quickly be able to understand margin performance. And then what we want to do is try to find outliers that they can go and take action on. I think a lot of teams that have done this type of analysis are pretty familiar with the pain points, so I won't really dig in on these too much. But as people know, especially when you're doing it at where you want to be able to take action, like that lowest level of detail, right? It's very data intensive. You're taking sales information at the lowest level of detail. You're taking costs over maybe the last few years. You're trying to smash all this stuff together. It's really difficult to do because it's taking inputs from different parts of the business. It can be a really manual and spreadsheet heavy process, hard to make sustainable, painful to do consistently, right? So there has to be a better way. Let's go take a look at what that is. Okay, so we just navigated to our analytics environment for this demo, and what we're going to focus on here is this gross margin dashboard. So as we bring that up, you'll notice along this one, like if you've watched some other of these videos, across the top, we have several different controls that you can use to really dial in this analysis. You can look at it at different levels of detail. In this case, we can look at it by time frame, get it drilled in more by packaging type or brand. So a lot of good options there. Along the top, we're just going to show the main metrics that we can look at in this analysis with, in this case, the 12-month trend. So how many total barrels did we produce? What was the barrelage by month? Margin percentage, what was it by month? We have margin per barrel, then we have sales per barrel, and we're looking at COGS per barrel. Both of those numbers together make up this margin per barrel. Down here we have a scatter plot. Scatter plots are really good at showing the relationship between two different variables. So in this case, what we're doing on this scatter plot is we're showing margin percent on this y-axis here. So we want numbers or brands to be higher up on this axis, right? We want higher margins versus lower margins. And then if we're looking at the x-axis on the scatter plot, this is, in this case, barrelage. So higher barrels to the right, lower barrels to the left. So ideally, all of our beers are sitting up here, right? That means we make a lot of money off of them and we sell a lot of them, and we don't have too many down here. So kind of depending where they fall in this range, you might have a different strategy on how to either improve the volume of those beers, if you're already getting a good margin, or maybe how to increase the margin a little bit more. We'll come back to this one in a second and show some of the different ways that we can be flexible with this analysis. And then over here on the right-hand side, we're just showing some bar graphs. These are all going to be sorted largest to smallest when it comes to total volume, just to make sure you're focused on like the most critical beers up at the top versus other ones down at the bottom. And then we're just a good way to be able to rack and stack everybody. We're showing margin percent here and barrelage. Okay, so that's already pretty interesting. I think we can pick out some insights like our highest volume beer is about in the middle when it comes to margin, which probably isn't too big a surprise. Let's see what we can do though as we look to dial these things in further. So let's just say, for example, we wanted to view sales per barrel by cost of goods sold per barrel. So now it'll kind of go back through and reanalyze all the information and show where we're sitting there. So when we're looking at this analysis, right, we want high sales per barrel, low cost of goods sold per barrel. So this would be our ideal range. We don't have anything that sits in that quadrant right now, but the good thing is we don't have anything that sits over here, which would be high cost, low sales. So as we're thinking about strategies, what maybe we would try to do is lower the cost on some of these that we get high sales per barrel. And then on the other hand, we might want to raise our sales per barrel on these that we have low cost of goods sold per barrel. So see what we can try to do to move things into this range. And I think by viewing it graphically like this, it gives a good representation on how the portfolio lays out. Okay, so that's a pretty interesting analysis, but here I'm going to reset this back to margin percent and barrels, and we're going to look at something a little bit different. So let's say now we want to dive into a specific brand. So in this case, I'm going to pick the one that we sell the most of. So I'm going to go up to this filter and we are going to pick that brand. It'll take a second, but everything else is going to now show information for just this brand. But not too interesting because we still have the detail level of brand up here. So what we want to do in this case is we want to dive into the different packaging styles within that brand. So I just chose that on that parameter that we have to choose from. So now we're back to our analysis. Ideally, everything sits over here. Oh, and we got a beer over there. So that's good. That means we sell a lot of it and we make a good margin off of it. And then not so much down here in this quadrant. Again, these would be low margin, low barrels. So we got a few different options there. One is, well, this packaging type is so small and we get the lowest margin off it. Let's just drop it completely, right? But then there's a few other things we can do. Like if we still need to sell these cases of 19-ounce beers, we probably should think about if we can get a higher price for them so we can start to move it up, ideally closer to this quadrant. Something else we could look at is maybe our cases of 12-ounce cans. We got a really good volume on it, but the margin's low. So do we have any opportunity to either try to lower the cost of this? So maybe that goes into, we won't dive into those dashboards today, but it could be increasing your beer yield. It could be changing your recipe. It could be monitoring how much you're doing substitutions of higher cost ingredients in your recipes. But I won't digress into that right now. There are several actions we could take, but ultimately we want to try to increase the margin on this one without sacrificing barrelage, right? So ideally we could bump it right up this graph and have it maybe sit up here. So we're starting to make a lot more money on that. Cool. So I hope that gives you a few good examples of how you can take all this information that drives margin information. It's a lot of data, right? If you have all this in a spreadsheet today, it's probably pretty complex and hard to use. But if you get it in a visualization system like this, and with the flexibility we have to slice and dice in a few different ways, you can really get to those actions and strategies that your team should make to improve profitability. So I think a lot of those benefits became pretty clear as we were working through the demo, but let me just summarize a few of them real quick. First of all, nice, clear insights, right? You can really see what's going on in the business. It's not like looking at this huge, complex spreadsheet where it's just too many numbers, it's overload, and you're not able to find these insights. And then what's nice about this is we got that good overview of the full portfolio, and we can spin it a few different ways, right? We keep this nice and flexible. So you're able to really do that analysis and find what's most important for you to work on. And we're trying to get people to those actionable details that right after a meeting of doing this analysis, maybe they can go out and take those direct actions, and starting the next day, they might be moving the needle in a different direction. It's nice and visual, clear insights, and the data is always up to date. You don't have to, if your team wants to do a gross margin analysis, they don't no longer have to like block out a half a day just to do all the spreadsheet work, right? They come in first thing in the morning, fire up these dashboards, and the insights are there, right there for you, ready to use. Sounds pretty good, right? Having all these insights right at your fingertips, ready for your team to action. So if you want some more information, first of all, I have a link up there to my website. You're going to find some different demos just like this on different areas of the business. We cover sales. Right now we just did margin. We'll dive into cost of goods sold. We'll look at brewery operations and bringing it all together in an executive summary to give people a holistic view of the business across all the different functions. I'm always happy to learn more about how your team's using data today and help you think through some possible solutions. There's my email. Please shoot me an email. I'd love to meet you and your team. And then finally, as you're ready to get started on Ecos Craft Insights, I have Allie's email on there also. Send her a quick note and she'll be happy to give your team some more information on Ecos Craft Insights and help you guys get set up so you're able to get to all of these benefits within just a few weeks of getting the process started. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day.